I'll be with you shortly. I'm trying to launch to connect to YouTube. Okay, good morning, everybody. If you can hear me, type yes in the chat room. If you can hear me, type yes. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. If you can hear me, please say yes. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Chinaza, Uche, Ume. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. All right. I said it's okay. Now the yes stop. Who is this greeting? Okay, no greetings. Thank you. Jessica Olumachuku, no greetings. Thank you. All right. Good morning once again, and welcome to the lecture series, which hopefully, all things being equal, we may likely conclude today. And if we are not able to conclude, we can do it in 30 minutes on Wednesday. But I hope to conclude the class today. Then we move on. You guys can have enough time to prepare for your final tests on Friday by God's grace. And we meet in exam hall on March 9th by God's grace. And I wish you all the best. Okay, good morning, and let's look at evolution. Okay, I think I should mute this chat room so that the messages won't be popping up on my screen. Okay, let me turn off notification. Okay, I think I'm safe from your disturbances now. Okay, so we have evolution, and evolution is not that, like I said the last, I think I laid introduction to this topic the other day. That was last Friday. So evolution is not that you evolve from ape, right? It is that there's a change, or there are changes between modern day organisms and organisms that once existed, right? So evolution is change over time, a process by which modern organisms have descended from common ancestors. So the modern day organisms, the chimpanzee, the humans, the mammals, for instance, and some other organisms of different species and classes, what do they have in common? Do they share common ancestor? All right, so it is change in heritable traits of biological populations over successive generations. So it is changing what we can see, traits that organisms can pass down or they can inherit from their parents. All right, and evolution is the core theme of biology that describes or responsible for the unity and diversity that we see between organisms. That is, evolution is what is responsible for how organisms look alike or how they differ from one another. Talking about diversity and unity. So there are, okay, talking about evolutionism and creationism. So there are two aspects to, or two views, or point of views, or school of thoughts as to organisms, right? Some believe that organisms have changed over time, right? That there has been life from the beginning, And what happens is a change over time. Like nothing, nobody creates anything. That organisms have been in existence right from time immemorial. And what we now see today is a change, modification from organisms that once existed and the ones that we have now. Then there is a school of thought known as creationism. These ones believe that God created living things to be unique. That God created all things, right, to be unique, right? So these are the two school of thought as per existence of organisms or living things. But scientists believe that there are mechanisms of evolution, right? So there is genetic drift, there is gene flow, there is mutation, and there is natural selection. But for the purpose of this class, we are going to be looking at uh, mutation and natural selection as a mechanism of evolution. The other two without, maybe if you come to CBG or if you are in CBG where you are doing evolution one, we will talk more about genetic drift or gene flow and gene flow. So, but for the purpose of this class, we are going to be looking at mutation and natural selection as a mechanism of evolution. The first one is a mutation, right? So, mutation simply means change in organism's genetic sequence, right? So there is a change that arises as a result of mutation. When we're talking about nucleic acids, we mentioned DNA as the blueprint of life, right? And containing the genetic information necessary for organism survival and inheritance and all sorts of life processes. Now, this mutation, right, which simply means change in genetic sequence of an organism. For instance, the codes, the nucleotides TCAGCCTT, for instance, right? There could be a change at some points, and that change can lead to different phenotypes in an organism, genetically and phenotypically. Change in genetic sequence usually brings about what is a change, like a deviation from the normal, right? So we have, sorry, I'm back. So we have mutations could be beneficial or detrimental, right? The ones that are beneficial don't know, maybe advantageous, and there are some that could be very deleterious or destructive that could lead to death, right? Example of deleterious or destructive is the sickle cell anemia, which is a change in the globin chain, beta globin chain, right? So there is a change that changes glutamic acid to valine, I think. All right. So that change, for instance, is a negative or destructive or disadvantageous mutation. But there are some mutations that are also advantageous, that are beneficial to the organism, depending on which protein is affected. Right. This could lead to increased survival of organism, and so overall, those mutations that are beneficial to the organisms are propagated over time, right, by mechanism of natural selection, whereas those ones that have negative effects affect the organisms and their population is wiped out. So there are two types of mutation. We have mutation can be destructive and advantageous. The ones that are destructive in a way could lead to death of the organism, thereby wiping out their population. Where the ones that are advantageous are beneficial to the organisms, and these good traits overall build up and leads to natural selection of those organisms. So we have some theories of evolution. Like I said earlier, there are different schools of thought as to evolution. There is the creationism and evolutionism. So there are some theories that have been propagated in support of evolution. So we have the theory of eternity, right? The early theories, rather. This include the theory of modern eternity, the theory of social creations, theory of catastrophism, theory of spontaneous generation. Then we have modern theories, the Darwin's theory of natural selection and the Lamarck's theory of inheritance of acquired traits. So let's look at the early theories, right? The theory of eternity. This one said that there is no beginning and there is no end to the universe. Like we said earlier, this one is the evolutionism that said that nobody created anything, right? That organisms will continue to exist, right? And what we only experience is a change over time. Like in the next 2 million years, the population of human that we have now might be different. The population of goats, the population of plants that we have around might be different over time, right? We can now, maybe we now have humans that have horns on their head as well. Okay, so that is simply what the theory of eternity as regarding evolution is all about. Then we have the theory of special creation. This one is the creationism idea that religion hold on to, the two faiths, the Christian and Muslim. I'm talking about Nigeria now, right? When you go to, they're talking about Hinduism, but the two most popular religious group in Nigeria, the Christian and the Muslims, believe that God created everything, the universe, in His beauty, right? Okay. Then we have the theory of catastrophism. This one was propagated by this French guy, Georges Cuvier, who stated that organisms that once existed over time, right, were wiped out or wiped off, right? That there was a catastrophe that wiped out the whole fauna, the whole species of plants and animals that we have, and new ones now spring forth. That is the theory of catastrophism. Like for instance, let's say there's an atomic bomb dropped in Nigeria or the whole world that destroys all the population. Then over time, some years, like your succession in secondary school biology, right? We now have new organisms that spring forth and succeed the present day organism. That is what the theory of catastrophism is all about. That there was a catastrophe that wiped off the population and leading to a creation of new ones. Then we have the theory of spontaneous generation by Lee Pasteur. Lee Pasteur was a French scientist that studied bacteria extensively, and they observed that where an environment is conducive, bacteria come into visible forms, and he demonstrated it with his broth experiment, right? Then we have the modern theories, including the theory of acquired traits, the theory of inheritance of acquired traits that was propagated by Baptist Lamarck. So Lamarck incorporated two ideas. So the major idea or the major concept behind Lamarck theory was that a trait that an organism acquired over its lifetime can be transmitted to the offspring, or an offspring can inherit any traits that an organism, that an individual acquired now. No, we can have acquired and inborn. All right. So these traits are acquired in an organism's lifetime. So according to Lamarck, those traits that an organism acquire in their lifetime can be transmitted to their offspring. So that is what this theory by Lamarck is all about. So example is that, for instance, if I acquire biceps and triceps, build muscle, like I go to gym now, I now develop big triceps and biceps. So Lamarck was of the opinion that all my children will acquire this trait from me. Or if one of you now decide to go and do BBL, enlarged nyash and fronts. So Lamarck was of the opinion that your children will naturally inherit the large front and back. So that is what this theory is all about. That any traits, any characteristics that an organism acquire in their lifetime can be inherited or passed on to their offspring. So that theory is false and could not stand the test of time or trial. So he also incorporated the idea of use and disuse in his theory, and this idea is all about any body parts, any structure that an organism uses over time are developed, and those ones that are not used are lost over time, right? So but his idea could not test the stand the like I said earlier, could not withstand experimental setup. So when his idea was subjected to experiment, they failed. Those ideas failed. Now, one of the one of the illustrations or one of the things he used for to back up his idea or his theory was the giraffe's neck. So he postulated that the giraffe were originally short-necked. Their ancestors were originally short-necked, and as a result of them having to browse on trees, right? That's how they were stretching their neck, and they progressively have longer neck. But that also was found out to be false, because among giraffes then there were giraffes that have naturally long neck, and not as a result of them having to browse on trees, right? So that was what he said was responsible, that okay, because those giraffes have to be stretching their neck to feed on top of trees now, that was why they end up having long neck. But no, there are some giraffes that were born with naturally long necks, and what happened was that those ones that have short neck, because they could not feed, they could not browse or stretch their leg enough to feed on those trees. That's why maybe their population become wiped off. And one of the experiments that proved Lamarck's theory to be false was the blacksmiths. If you observe blacksmiths, like I said earlier, due to the strenuous nature of their work, right, they develop biceps, and their children do not come up with that. And if you take mice, another scenario is that if you pick two mice, male and female, cut their tails, originally long tails now. If you now cut their tails and mate them, they've acquired short traits. Yes or yes? The mice were naturally long, they have long tail. So because we want to put this test, this theory of Lamarck into a trial, let's pick two mice or two dogs, male and female, cut their tail and mate them. Believe that their litter will have long tail and not short tail. So that is one of the theory experiments that disproved Lamarck's theory that acquired traits cannot be transmitted. Now let's look at Darwin's theory of evolution. So Darwin was an English naturalist that traveled on a ship, HMS Beagle, as a student, right, in search of evidence in support of evolution. Right, so he visited the Galapagos Island, right, and described evolution as a slow, gradual, and continuous process, a never-ending process. Right, so Charles Darwin believed that all of these finches came from a common ancestor, and that they are different as a result of natural selection. So on the Galapagos Island, so this is the Galapagos Island, the HMS Beagle that he traveled with. This is the ship, right? And this is the island, and he traveled this route to the Galapagos Island. So you may want to read up the voyage of the Beagle, when it set out, when it returned, and the major findings. So on that island, Charles Darwin observed different a species of bird known as the finches. So over time we refer to them as Darwin finch because he studied those birds a lot. So on that island, Charles Darwin found that the population of these birds, their big structure vary depending on where they are found on this island, right? So you've also found that one, on the highland there is a geographical demarcation, a delineation into highland and lowland, right? Don't forget, an highland is a piece of land surrounded by water. So on that island there is a lowland and there is a high land, right? So he now observed that on the highland there are different species of Darwin's finches depending on what they feed on in their environment, right? Those birds that feed on nuts, for instance, we have their beaks that are modified or suited for cracking nuts. Those ones that feed on nut on worms, for instance. So he observed that the different finches have different beak modification depending on what they feed on in their environment. So he concluded that those birds only have these beaks as a result of natural selection, in nature selecting those adaptations, those abilities, or those structures that we find on them. So that is basically what natural selection is all about. Nature selecting. So for instance, if you find yourself on an island tomorrow, maybe God forbid a plane crash drop you on an island, or you find yourself in an island where you can only survive on fish and crabs and what have you, and maybe you're traveling with your partner and you and your partner find yourself there. Now, when you give birth to a child on that island, you will believe me that it is those garbage and rubbish that you are able to survive on your habitat, that your children will also survive on. So over time, you see that nature will confer survival ability, right, on you, that maybe those things that you don't even know that you can cope with in the first place. Those conditions, those genes that don't even think that you have will begin to express themselves so that you can survive in your immediate environment. So that is what the concept of natural selection is all about. The nature is selecting those abilities, those genes that help an organism to survive, to cope in their environment. So these are the Darwin's finches, about 13 birds, different modifications. Some are found on the ground, some are found above the ground on trees. So these birds have different beak modifications, about 13 species of them. And Darwin said that all of these different finches come from a common ancestor, and that their differences were as a result of natural selection. So it was nature that helped them, that make them to be differ, but they all share common ancestor. That is, they are in a way related. And the differences that we see among them is because of the nature, environment that they find themselves. Now, so let's look at the theory of natural selection. So the theory is that individuals, underline the word individual, within a population with the most favorable traits for an environment survive and pass on those traits. So what we are saying is that in an environment, individual organism, we have different traits, different characteristics that help them to survive in the environment. While those ones that have less traits or less favorable traits will not be able to survive and their population will be reduced. For instance, when COVID-19 was rampant, there are some people that were never down with COVID-19, but there are some people that were so weak that they got the virus, and maybe their immune system, or maybe their immune system, because they could not get early treatment, they die. All right, but there are some people, even they were exposed as some people that were in the front line fighting COVID-19, but they were never down with COVID-19 virus. So that shows that we have different genes. Our genes predispose us or could also save us from certain certain ailments or diseases. So that is what this the law of natural selection is all about. There are some individuals that have certain traits that help them to survive in adverse conditions, in adverse environments. Where there are some that, like Yoruba will say, they are agric fowl that could not survive difficult situation. Some people are local. So that is what we are talking about now. So those ones that have most favorable traits will survive and pass on those traits that make them to survive to their offspring. Now, this is different from the theory of inherited acquired trait, because acquired is not inborn, right? Whereas these ones, they have the traits. Yes, there's a gene that is responsible for it. Those genes are now expressing themselves under those conditions, and what those genes become expressed, they can be transmitted to their to offspring. So that difference between Lamarck and the and the natural selection, Darwin's natural selection. the traits that Lamarck was referring to, they were acquired, whereas Darwin's traits were natural, right? They were natural. So bullet point 2 says that nature, the environment, selects the variation that are most useful, right? So it is the nature that is bringing out those traits. So it is the nature that is selecting those traits that are useful, and that we call this type of selection natural selection, whereby it is the nature that selects those traits that help an organism to survive. So what are the process of evolution by natural selection? Process of natural evolution by natural. Please, this title should read process of natural selection, right? Process of natural selection. When I'm okay, so we have variation. So what we mean by this process of natural selection is that what okay, let me cancel this and change it to process of natural selection. What are the steps needed for us to have natural selection? Number one, there is variation. So what we mean by that is that individuals in a population show differences in traits due to genetic variation. And that is the process that we see during process 1 of meiosis 1, where there is synapses of homologous chromosomes. The exchange genetic makeup, there is this exchange leads to variation, differences between sexually reproducing organisms. And you will know that organisms, you will agree that organisms vary genetically. No two individuals have 100% genes or genetic similarity, except identical twins. Even identical twins, studies have shown that no that the identical twins are not 100% right identical. So there is variation between organisms. Then another key step or another key point in natural selection to take place is that there is overproduction of offspring. That is, organism will always produce more offspring than the environment can cater for, than the environment can support. This leads to competition, right? Because organisms will now begin to struggle for limited resources, right? For instance, if we have a room in a cell of prisoners, and of 200 prisoners, you are feeding them with 10 loaves of bread every day, you will see that there will be survival of the fittest. They begin to compete among themselves, and those ones that are able to compete favorably will live. Like organisms compete for mates, organisms compete for food, for shelter. Those ones that could not make something out of the limited resources are disenfranchised, and over time they can lose their life if they are exposed, if they don't have shelter, if they don't have mates to copulate with, if they don't have if they don't have resources to survive, right? So we have differential survival and reproduction. So individuals with advantageous traits survive and reproduce more successfully than others, right? Then we have inheritance. Those beneficial traits are gradually or genetically passed on from parents to offspring. Those traits accumulate. Then there is speciation over time. So speciation simply means evolution. Speciation, new species, process by which organisms, new species spring forth. So all of these are processes of a natural selection. Okay, maybe before we go to types of evolution, let's see if we have any question before we proceed. Na attendance full here o. I can't hear anything, sir. Are you sure? Maybe I'm sure you should be able to hear me now. That's the person that could not hear anything. So if you have any question, let's drop in the chat room. I'm there now, looking at taking questions. Okay. Okay, maybe I should use this opportunity to talk about your test that is coming up on Friday. By God's grace, please do not drop attendance now. So there will be test on Friday. We keep receiving complaints and calls and two. So as a result of that, we're going to use another platform for your test too, or for the mop-up test. The mop-up or last test is for everybody, right? Everybody will take part in it, and there's going to be the last test. So if you have missed the first two tests, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, as a result of whatever might be responsible for that, you've missed it, you don't have scores, please don't miss this last one. There won't be any test after this. Please, I am begging. Okay, let's continue. I don't think there's any question in the chat box. I don't think there's any questions. Attendance, they are dropping. Okay, so let's look at types of evolution. We have divergent evolution. Divergent evolution means two or more closely related species become more and more dissimilar. That is, new species diverge. Or so what divergent evolution is? Don't forget, evolution simply means speciation of new organisms arising, right, or evolving, if you must use that word to define evolution, right? So we have divergent, as the name implies, diverge, separates, right? So divergent evolution means two or more closely related organisms that share common ancestor diverge from the common ancestor. For instance, myself now, I am Fakorede. I have maybe I have 7 children. So these 7 children diverge from me, and over time they give rise to different species, right? So that is what uh, divergent evolution is all about. So look at these examples. We have a giraffe, we have cow, we have tiger, and we have a is that anteater there, right? So all these organisms share common ancestor, and over time they diverge or they evolve, but they share a common ancestor. So divergence evolution indicates that organisms diverge or evolve from a common ancestor, and this is the common ancestor here. In this illustration here, this is the ancestor usually depicted by hair, right? And this is one population of organism that diverge from this root. We refer to this point as the root, right? And that root is the, like, when we say where's your root, or that means where do you come from, right? So that is a divergent evolution. So we've said that it occurs when geographic barriers separate population members, or when a small group leaves an original population. Example is seen in polar bear and brown bears. So we mean that there is a geographical barrier that separates two populations, and over time populations that could interbreed could no longer interbreed, right? And that's they diverge. Then we have convergent evolution. Convergent evolution means unrelated species becoming more and more similar. In converse with divergent, we're talking about divergent is related becoming more dissimilar. So the opposite is convergent. Convergence means unrelated becoming more similar. Or ecological niche where they find themselves. So we have this population of organisms that evolve together. We have shark, ichthyosaur, and dolphin. These are different unrelated species, right? And if you look at it, say that they are fish. They are fish. No, they are not all fishes. We have fish, shark, we have a dolphin. Dolphin is a mammal, for instance. And the reason why they evolve together is because they find themselves in similar environments, or they have ecological pressure acting on them. So that is convergent evolution. That is unrelated species becoming more and more similar. Then we have parallel evolution. Parallel evolution is development of traits in two unrelated species descending from a common ancestor. And you can look at the arrow. So this means that these organisms diverge from a common ancestor, but they now evolve in parallel. Example is the woolly mammoth and the modern elephants, right? So what they mean is that they evolve from a common ancestor, but they develop independently of one another, right? So that is parallel evolution. They evolve independently from a common ancestor and develop similar traits. And you can see the trunk is I think is the trunk we call it of these elephants, right? Of the mammoth and the modern elephant. It's because they share a common ancestor. Then we have co-evolution. Co-evolution means organisms that are closely associated evolving together, right? So we have influence of closely associated species on each other in their evolution. Species evolve together reciprocally after each other's evolution. So look at these insects and that flower. So they evolve together. As the flower is evolving a long style, and this insect needs to feed on the on the juice that this style produces on the nectar, right? The insect will also evolve a long proboscis that will help it to fix on whatever it wants to take from that plant with a long style. So that is co-evolution. That is, we are closely associated. I am dependent on you. So if you go this way, I go this way. That is why you see the arrow, the two arrows bending like a form of bump. So if you go straight, I go straight. If you go low, I go low. If you go down, I go down. That is co-evolution. We are evolving together. So any change that you bring about, I will match it so that because of our close association, because I am dependent of you in a way. So there is a relationship in co-evolution. All right. So organisms evolve together because of their association or relationship that they share together. So that is basically the 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 four types of evolution: divergent, convergent, parallel, and co-evolution. Okay, this question says that can evolution happen in humans today, and what traits will be affected if it does? Well, I cannot answer your question yes or no, right? But what we have is, in terms of evolution, like I said earlier, is not that you are evolving. It's not that organisms are evolving. Maybe tomorrow organisms with two legs will evolve from human, right? Evolution does not talk about human beings or creatures evolving. It's talking about change. What change has taken place? So we cannot talk about what change will happen tomorrow. So I cannot see into the future. So I cannot answer your question that can evolution happen in humans today? I don't know. It is God that designs and know what will happen tomorrow. But what we have now is present day organisms. So what evolution is dealing with modern organisms and how they have changed over time. So if there is evolution tomorrow, tomorrow could be 10 million years. It could be tomorrow, Tuesday, February 24, 2026. So we begin to study evolution in the aspect of, okay, which organisms do we have today, right, in the next 10 years and in the past 10 years? What do they have in common? What is the diversity and unity that we see between them? So I think that is my answer to that question from Olufela Oluwadara. Okay, let's go back to the class. So we've looked at the four types of evolution: divergent, for a recap, organisms that are similar become more dissimilar, share of common ancestor. Then we have convergent, unrelated or dissimilar organisms looking more similar because of their maybe the environment that they share, or they have the same pressure acting on them, or they find themselves in the same ecological niche. Then we have parallel evolution, which simply means co-evolution, or a form of co-evolution whereby organisms diverged. Sorry, a form of divergent evolution where organisms diverge from a common ancestor and they evolve in parallel. Then we have co-evolution where one organism affects how the other organism evolve because of their relationship or dependence on the other. So let's look at evidence of evolution. So there are several laws of evidence pointing to the fact that organisms that we have now share a common ancestor have similarities with organisms that have existed in the past. This is just some of them, right? So we have fossils, anatomy, embryo, and biogeography. So fossils simply means extinct species, organisms that have become that are no longer in existence. They become fossilized. They are found in sedimentary rocks, in ice, right? And we now excavate them. We now study them to talk to for similarities between them, old old day organisms, or ancient organisms rather, and modern organisms. So they do show relation between current and ancient organisms, right? So we have we have fossils as those organisms that we use to show in time to show relationship between ancient and current day organisms. Then we have structure, anatomy, anatomical structure, anatomical evidence in support of evolution. So we have homologous structure. Homologous structures are structure that have a basic or the same architecture plan but have different functions in organisms, and it's a form of, it shows common ancestry. So if you look at this image on the board, we have human, cats, we have bird, we have whale, right? So we have similar structures in them: the humerus, the radius, the ulna, and the carpus. So all of these are similar structures, homologous, similar structures that do certain things, different things, that perform different functions in organisms. And the reason why these structures are similar, are found in this group of organisms, is because we share common ancestor, right? So we are related in a way. We have analogous structures. Analogous simply means different structures doing the same thing. Don't forget we said we are looking at evidence of evolution. If we are saying that organisms have evolved, if we are saying that organisms, these modern day organisms, have this similarity or different from ancient ones, so we need evidence. All right, so we're looking at analogous structure now. So analogous simply means organisms that once existed, right? The structures that they have, and the ones modern days that we have, modern day, for instance, this organism here, pterodactyl, right, is no longer in existence, have become extinct. But we have insects in modern day organisms, we have birds, we have bats. So there is this analogous structure that they have, that is different structures, but they have similar function. So if you look at the wings of these organisms, it is used for flight, right? So this simply means that they have different origins, but they share similar functions and different structures. Then we have evidence in embryo, in embryogenesis, right? Organisms, sexual reproducing organisms, starts from gametogenesis, production of gametes, fertilization, cleavage, and adult. I'm sure Dr. Abazu has dealt with that topic. So there are, at some point, these organisms, all organisms are like this, especially sexually reproducing organisms are like this at one point in time. So no matter how beautiful you might think you are now, you were at one point like this guy here, right? So this shows that these organisms have certain things in common, and what they have in common is their ancestor. They have common ancestry. So whether you are a fish, salamander, tortoise, chick, hog, calf, rabbit, or human, at one point in your lifetime you have these. And the unified structure in there is the pharyngeal pouches that I am showing in blue. These pharyngeal pouches, that structure that looks like this, right? It is common in those organisms at one point in time. So these are evidences highlighting or pointing to the fact that organisms that we have now, modern organisms and ancient ones, have certain things in common. Then biogeography as evidence of evolution, we have some certain organisms, geographical distribution of organisms, similar environments leads to similar adaptation in organisms, even if far apart, thereby having similar types of organisms. So there are some vegetations, geographical areas that have similar organisms regardless of where they are found, because because they have similar sorry because of similar geographical distribution, so they are bound to have the same group of organisms. Then we have, okay, I think we have we are done with evolution with that. So we have one more topic to cover. So all of these are evidence pointing to 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 evolution. We have this as, so we have some other evidence in terms of DNA, biochemical analysis, for instance, because of similarities in physiology that we have with humans, with mice. We can use mice in drug design. It's because we have same physiology. For instance, if you are designing any drug or vaccine, you don't just go from the lab and go and start testing on humans. You start with cell lines, right? Then to organisms, mice, you do trial, right? And it's because our physiology is the same. That is why we can use all of these, and because of our common ancestors that we share. So I think that is all we have for what's it called, for evolution. So it seems we are ending this topic today, and I'm glad for that, so that you can have enough time. So let's look at the chat room and see whether we have any question line there for us. Coming in the chat room, where is it? Why is it not coming up? Sorry, my phone is misbehaving. I'm coming. Please, if you have a question, you can drop it now. I have a question, sir. Drop the question now. You are telling me you have a question. You have a question. You need to announce that. Sir, what topics does the test cover? The test will cover this topic and Dr. Dada's topic, ecology. The last lecturer that took you, and this last topic. I think that answers your question. Okay. What topic does the test cover? I just answered that question now. S10, when you are ready to ask your question, you can type it. Okay, let's go to the last topic in this lecture series, which is the ecological time scale. Sorry, geological time scale. So the geological time scale refers to, as the name implies, a scale of events, right? Scaling. Okay, like for instance, we say between yesterday and today, what happened? Between Monday and Tuesday, what happened? Between 2021 2022, what happened? So the geological time scale is a record of events in life, in Earth history, in the history of the earth. What has happened between 2,000 years ago and 2 million years ago, between 17 billion years ago, and right. So that is what is like history, the chronicle of Earth history. That is what the geological time scale simply refers to. So the geological time scale is divided into eons, era, period, and epoch, from largest to smallest. So it's like when we divide our calendar into months, into years, into months, into days, and to weeks, even weeks, days, time, minutes, seconds, hours, and what have you. So that is what's basically what the geological time scale also is also about. So we have era, we have eon being the most encompassing, and this is divided into era. Then era is further divided into periods, and periods is divided into epoch, right? And we study fossils to arrive at this scale. So the geological time scale is divided, like we said earlier. We have the Phanerozoic Eon, which is divided into three major era: the Paleozoic era, the Mesozoic era, and the Cenozoic era. Xeno meaning recent, Meso meaning middle, and Paleo meaning ancient. And the Zoic simply means the existence of life form in this different periods of time or history that we're looking at. So this is a chart showing the geological time scale. So we have this chart showing from from coming from the oldest to the newest events. So we have the eon, like we said, that the time scale is divided into eon, eon into era, era into period, and period into epoch. Right? So the eon that we currently operate is the Phanerozoic eon. Before that, we've had Hadean, the Archean, and the Proterozoic. And life began about 4.5 billion, 4.5 billion years ago. 4.54 yeah, gig. What is gig? Gig is 10 times 10 raised to power 9 giga years ago, right? Okay, so we have these events. Yeah, this stuff, that's it. How are you? How are you? So life began around that time. So we have the Phanerozoic eon divided into, don't forget we said the time scale is divided into four: eon to era, era to period, and period to epoch. So we have the Phanerozoic eon divided into three eras, like we said earlier: the Cenozoic era, the Mesozoic era, and the Paleozoic era. The Paleozoic is the ancient, the Cenozoic is the recent. Then the Cenozoic era is equally divided into periods. So we have the Cenozoic era divided into Quaternary, Neogene, and Pleiogene. The Mesozoic era is divided into Cretaceous, Jurassic, and the Triassic. The Paleozoic era is divided into Permian, Carboniferous, Devonian, Silurian, Ordovician, and Cambrian. And within the Carboniferous, you have the Pennsylvanian and the Mississippian period. Now, if you observe, it is only the Cenozoic era that has epoch. All of these do not have epoch. So the Cenozoic era has their corresponding, the periods in the Cenozoic era has their corresponding epoch. So the Paleogene has Oligocene, Eocene, and Paleocene as the period, as the epoch. Then the Quaternary has Holocene and Paleocene, and the Holocene is the modern day life that we have. So if I ask you to classify the events, the today, for instance, today 23rd of February, into the life history. So under Aeon we have Phanerozoic Aeon, under era we have Cenozoic, period Quaternary, and epoch is Holocene. And that started about 11,000, about 12,000 years ago. And that is what is operational till today. Then we have sorry my love. So this is the geological time scale chronicling Earth events. Then we have the next slide. Oh, sorry, I've jumped something. Okay. So we have the Cenozoic era. So we just want to pick the different era, the three different era: the Cenozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Paleozoic, right? So the Cenozoic era, like we said, is the one that is currently underway now, and is regarded as the age of mammals, right? It is the most recent and currently underway. And the major event that happened in that era is evolution of primates, diversification of mammals, flowering plants, and this continues till today. And like I said earlier, Cenozoic is the only era that contains epoch. And if you come here, you see that it's only the Cenozoic era that contains coming. It's only the Cenozoic era that contains what? Epoch. All of these, the Mesozoic and the Paleozoic, do not have era. That's why they do not have epoch rather. Okay, so the table down there shows the Cenozoic era and the periods, the Quaternary period and the Tertiary period. The Tertiary period started 65 million to 1.5 million years ago, while the Quaternary period is about 1.5 million years ago to present day life, right? And the events that happen in those periods in Paleogene and the Neogene is so indicated. Then we have the Mesozoic era, which is regarded as the age of dinosaur, which was when evolution cycles and so we have for the Mesozoic era, we have different periods: the Cretaceous period, Jurassic period, and Triassic period. So the Triassic period started between 248 to 213 million years ago. But the one that is striking that is the Jurassic period, right? This was where dinosaurs became diversified. And if you have seen the movie Jurassic Park, right? The Jurassic Park was 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 a was named after dinosaur, because that was when dinosaur became diversified. They were rampant on the earth surface, and they also became extinct at during the Cretaceous period. Right, dinosaur population peaked during the Cretaceous periods, and they also went extinct. So we don't have dinosaur nowhere in the world. So that era was regarded as the age of a dinosaur, the Mesozoic era. Then we have lastly the Paleozoic era, which is the ancient life, like we said earlier, and all existing animal phyla developed. Earliest plants also arose, and the different events that shaped that era was shown in that in the slide there. For the Permian period, for the Carboniferous period, Devonian, Silurian, Ordovician, and the Cambrian. So all of these the different, what's it called, era in that the different periods in the era. For the Paleozoic era, we have the Permian period, and this was modern pine trees first appeared, the Pangea supercontinent, and what have you. So the story is there. And with that, we have come to the end of BIO101 lecture for this section, and I can only wish you guys all the best. So if we have So if we have further question or any question, you can post them here now. Let's answer them. And if there is none, we have come to the end of the lecture for today. And I wish you guys. So we have this long question here. Apart from competition between humans in this divided world, can our civilization save us from going extinct? I believe in evolution. So I am asking. So I am asking if our advanced reason can modify our environment for our survival, or maybe tailored for us to have better genes, since environment and structure and function are so related. Well, the main idea is maybe civilization, technology advancement, research can save us from what? From going extinct. Whether you believe in biology or you are looking at it from the religious angle, one day or the other, the population that we have now, our generation in the next 200 years, nobody that is living now will be living in the next 200 years. So there is nothing that can save human from death. So as long as there is death, population will keep going, coming and going. And the modification, the search, the 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 what was it called, there's going to be variation, and this variation could come in any form, right? So civilization cannot save from, yeah, going extinct. I don't want to use the word extinct with human now, but I believe in death. So, and what we now have depend on the type of the environment that we have could also have a play. It could also affect the type of genes that we expressed and what have you. But civilization saving from extinction, I don't think so. I don't think so. Okay, so what was the reason for the extinction of dinosaur species? Okay, somebody said that a comet exploded and destroyed them. Can people that got zero in the first test? Please, the test is for everybody. Oh. Don't, the test is for everybody. This one that is asking me. The test is for everybody. Don't ask me whether you can do test too. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Do have a wonderful day and all the best in your academic pursuit.